Hello everyone, I'm Anna, staff front-end engineer on the pipeline authoring team, and in this video I'll walk you through dynamic inputs for CI/CD pipelines, a new feature our team has shipped in GitLab 18.7. Pipeline inputs can now have conditional rules. This feature addresses a workflow problem. When non-technical users need to trigger pipelines, think ops teams, release managers, or anyone who isn't the pipeline author, they need a simple way to configure inputs without writing YAML. Dynamic inputs solve this by letting authors define the logic once, while users just interact with guided dropdowns. This means you can configure inputs so that the selection options update dynamically based on previous selections, cascading dropdowns that guide users to valid input combinations. With this feature, users can select values from dropdown without writing YAML. Options populate based on what was previously selected, which reduces errors and streamlines pipeline creation. Here's how you set it up in your CI config. At the top, we have regular inputs, like cloud provider, environment, and enable premium, each with static options and a default value. This is standard input syntax. The new part is the instance type starting on the line 18. Instead of static options, it has a rules array. Each rule has an if condition using the double bracket syntax to reference other inputs. The first rule on the line 22 is a complex condition. It matches when cloud provider is AWS and environment is prod, or when enable premium is true. When this rule matches, the options are M5X large and M5X too large. The second rule is simpler. When cloud provider is GCP, the option changes to GCP instance types. And the last rule on the line 31 is a fallback with no condition. If nothing else matches, we default to T3 micro. Rules are evaluated in order. The first matching rule wins. Now let's see how this looks in the UI. On the new pipeline page, we have cloud provider set to AWS, environment set to dev, and enable premium set to false. The instance type input at the bottom shows T3 micro. When I click on the instance type dropdown, I see AWS instance types for the dev environment, T3 micro, T3 small, and so on. Now watch what happens when I change environment from dev to prod. The instance type options automatically update to show larger production-appropriate instances like M5 large and M5X large. And when I switch cloud provider from AWS to GCP, the instance type options change again, now showing cloud instance types like N1 standard 1 and N1 standard 2. This all happens instantly. No page reload, no API calls. The rules are evaluated right in the browser. So how does this work under the hood? It starts with your CI config containing the spec inputs with rules. The backend parses the double bracket expressions and converts them into a condition tree, a JSON structure that represents the logic. This condition tree is sent to the frontend via GraphQL. The frontend then evaluates the rules client-side whenever an input value changes. This client-side evaluation is what makes it feel instant. There is no round trip to the server, so the UI updates immediately. The expression syntax supports the operators you'd expect: equals, not equals, and the logical operators and, or, and not. Here's what the condition tree looks like. On the left, we have the expression as you write it in YAML. Inputs.env equals prod and inputs.region not equals local. On the right is a JSON tree that gets sent to the frontend. It has a type of and two operands, an equals comparison and a not equals comparison. The frontend walks this tree and evaluates it against the current form values to determine which rule matches. That's dynamic inputs for CI/CD pipelines. Check out the documentation to try it out yourself, and visit the epic to see more details and provide feedback. This feature is controlled by the CI Dynamic Pipeline Inputs feature flag, which was introduced in the milestone 18.6. The rules field in the GraphQL API is gated behind this feature flag. The flag is enabled by default since 18.7. If you don't see the dynamic rules working, check that the flag is enabled for your instance. Thank you for watching.